There you go. So welcome to the first Mentoring Works webinar for 2023. Lead a mentoring conversation. And this is especially for managers who mentor their staff, mentors who want to up their game, really hone your skills, keep them sharp. And in fact, anyone who wants a fail-safe method for mentoring. I've been teaching this method now for over 30 years, and it's something that really works in pretty much all situations. So in this webinar, what I'm going to focus on is I'll start by talking about 10 different ways to use mentoring. Now, I know there are more than 10 ways you can mentor, but these are the most common, I suppose, ways that I've found over the last 30 years or so. I will be sharing with you a 4-step formula for mentoring, tried and tested. And I'll also talk about some of the reasons it works so well. And I'm also going to share with you some sample questions for effective mentoring conversations and invite you. I know we've got a lot of experience on the line here today, so I will invite participants who are live today to share some of the questions they use in their particular situations. And of course, the sample questions that I offer are not meant to be a script for you. They're meant to be examples. I would encourage you to develop your own repertoire of questions that are comfortable for you and suitable for the people that you are working with. So let's start by looking at some of the ways, and I'll ask you how many of these ways you're actually using at the moment. So of course we start, when we talk about many ways to mentor, our foundation is that traditional format for mentoring, where an expert mentors a novice, or someone more senior mentors someone more junior, or even someone who's just a bit older or more experienced teams up with a younger person or a less experienced person. That's our foundation, our traditional mentoring point of view, and one that is widely used today. But I'd like to expand that idea of mentoring and give us some different ways that we can use it. Now, we do have a lot of informal mentoring. That is mentoring that happens by chance. You happen to be in the right place at the right time, the right person comes along, something clicks, and conversations start to happen. Perhaps it's a one-off conversation, perhaps it's the beginning of a lifelong but informal mentoring relationship. The word mentoring might never pass anyone's lips, but in fact that is what's going on in an informal way. Then we get to the formal mentoring. Now, what I regard as formal mentoring is something that happens within a mentoring program or some sort of structure, so that a lot of people are involved. There are particular aims or objective of that program. There might be some assistance with pairing up. Hopefully there is some training, both for mentors and for mentees, into how to get the best out of that mentoring relationship. The mentoring might have a set duration, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, something. Hopefully there's a range of support, a coordinator, a program manager perhaps, some resources provided to people, and ongoing support. If they hit any road bumps, then there's someone there to help sort that out. So a structured program, and a structured program also, one would think, would be evaluated after periods of time to see how it's going and check. Reciprocal mentoring is very popular. Sometimes it's a form of informal mentoring. We don't even realize it's going on. It's a situation where it might be a friend or a colleague, or one day I might be mentoring you. You come to me with a question, or to use a sounding board with an issue or a problem or some insight. But next week it might be me asking you and coming to you for a bit of support. Another popular form of mentoring these days is reverse mentoring. And this is the reverse of the traditional roles. So it's the younger person mentoring the older person, or the more junior colleague speaking with a more senior colleague about specific issues that they might have more experience on. Group mentoring, where you might have one mentor and a number of mentees meeting regularly in a group situation. A form of group mentoring, indeed, is a mastermind group. This has been very popular for a long time. It was wonderful when I was a small business person to have a group of colleagues where I could meet. There was no one single mentor. We would come and in turn, we might have an issue to put on the table and get input from our business colleagues. Or we might have what's called a hot seat, where someone presented their issue or their topic of discussion, and the rest of the group could only ask questions of the person in the hot seat. And that's very powerful for gaining insight into an issue. A mentoring circle is yet another form of group mentoring. There might be one or more mentors or elders, and fostering the wisdom and the growth and the development of a group of, we'll call them mentees. What is also becoming very important these days is a leader, manager, supervisor, whatever title that person has, who is mentoring their team. And they might do it in a team learning situation, or they might do it one-on-one. It's all about development of the workers involved, and it's usually focused on their work performance or sometimes projects that they're undertaking together. And then there are what I call mentoring moments, these opportunistic conversations that you might have in the course of, in the normal course of your daily activities with people. You just take that opportunity. Some people call it the teachable moment. So it is, I call it a mentoring moment. Now, I'm really interested to know, and I'm going to launch a poll here, which of these are you currently involved in? So you can choose more than one because there's overlap between some of these. And also you probably, if you're involved with one, chances are you're involved with more than one. So I'll leave that up for a minute. I'll just take a look at the comments that have been coming in. Hello to Megan. Hello to Lauren. And hello, Linny and Sharon. Hello. Welcome, Kim. And Evie said hello to us before, and Gozi, Ron or Jacqueline, I'm not sure which. Okay, cool. And just got some more coming in. All right. So just a few seconds more. Most people have had a chance to pick. It is multiple choice. You can choose more than one. And I'm going to finish that now and share the results with you, just so we can get a snapshot of what people are doing. Okay, so we can see there's still a lot of traditional mentoring going on, and I kind of expect that, and a lot of informal. In fact, I think informal was probably the highest score of any of those options. A lot of formal, some reciprocal, a little bit of reverse mentoring, oh, 15%, okay. Group mentoring, yeah, we've got 38% there. Okay, mastermind groups, yeah. I think that the mastermind groups are truly fantastic in your professional realm. So if you are mentoring others, it's really important that you get some mentoring as well, because we're all developing and growing and learning. And look at those mentoring moments. I'm really pleased to see the leader as mentor is getting up there now. It's actually being written into a lot of job descriptions for leadership roles, and certainly employees expect to be mentored these days. So let's just get rid of that and we'll continue on. So there are, if you're lucky and you've had the experience of talking to someone who really listened to you, someone who perhaps said little but was clearly attentive, interested and supportive, as you shared your thoughts, you would have felt certain benefits. You felt heard and you felt better as you had that support to maybe solve a problem. And they didn't necessarily solve it for you. You solved it as a result of that sounding board, of having that conversation. Because you were doing a lot of the talking, and they were such a good listener, you were able to gain insight yourself. That understanding, even that aha moment we talk about, as realization kind of bubbled up from inside you. Maybe you came to a decision, or at least discovered choices that you perhaps weren't aware of before, alternatives, and even opportunities that you hadn't thought of. This is what I describe as a mentoring conversation. There are some of the benefits. So the definition I'm using, and this is that of my book from last year, Advanced Mentoring Skills, Taking Your Conversations to the Next Level. I believe a mentoring conversation is one where people are safe to explore their thoughts and feelings. They use critical, creative, and above all, reflective thinking to gain that insight and generate possible options. They make informed choices as they decide on goals and actions. They're assisted as needed to plan the way forward, and they are supported and encouraged as they implement their plan. So I see a mentoring conversation as a dialogue. It's a two-way flow of communication. It encourages the mentee to do about 80% of the talking, at least in the beginning of that conversation. And the mentor leads the conversation, firstly, by creating a safe space. Remember, we want them to feel safe to explore. They need to feel safe before they'll be willing to open up and explore their thoughts and their feelings. So the mentor is going to be asking a lot of questions. Really, asking questions is a key skill. I'm going to touch on that today, and then we'll go in more depth in a later webinar. And what we want is people to actually open their minds, open up to more possibilities, more options, more opportunities, things that perhaps they hadn't thought of for themselves. Now, because this is advanced mentoring, I want you to be very aware that what we're looking at is both opening the mind in terms of a person's conscious mind and their subconscious mind. So I'm sure most of you are familiar. So the conscious mind is those thoughts and feelings that are in our awareness. We recognize them. They might flip through, but we are aware of them. They're in our conscious mind. This is where we do our conscious thinking. However, there's a lot going on in our subconscious. So it's not necessarily in our awareness. It's kind of going on in the background of our minds. Lots of ideas percolate there. A lot of our attitudes and a lot of the things that influence us actually come from the subconscious. And so what we need to do is actually be aware of that, and that subconscious, be aware that the subconscious shape our actions at least as much and probably more than our conscious questions do. And Counsellors often talk about their clients presenting problem. So in other words, what's on the top of their mind when the client begins to talk. And trained counsellors know that this is not going to be the entire issue, and it will take time to create that safety, use the good questions, and use exceptional listening to really get down to the real substantive issues. And while mentors are definitely not psychotherapists, we do need to keep in mind that the mentee's first comments are their rationale for coming to see you. And we will help the most if we can get beyond the superficial level and allow what's not on top of their mind, it's in the subconscious mind, to actually come up to the top. Okay, so just going to pause for a moment and check, are there any questions? Ron, answer to your question is yes, that is so, yes. Okay, Simone would like to know more about mastermind groups. Look, what I'm going to do, Simone, is going to keep going with the content, and I'll come to that question, if I may, at the end. I'm just making a note, mastermind, so I can come back to that at the end for you, okay? Oh, Josephine, yes, I do remember you attending previously. Great, thank you. Okay, thank you. So I will continue on, and I will, I want to make sure that we do have time for your questions at the end. Okay, so I want to share with you the 4-step formula for mentoring and why it works. So those of you who are regulars will be familiar with this model, and it is a fundamental basis for any mentoring conversation. And I'm going to talk about both the model and why it works as we go through this section. So just a heads up, I have laid out a framework for a mentoring conversation, like an analog clock face, where we begin at the 12 o'clock position. So we start by talking about, I labeled it current reality. What I mean is what's going on from the mentee's point of view. We start at that position. We'll move in a clockwise fashion, talking about what's going on, getting them to reflect on that current reality, the situation, the issue, or the topic they want to discuss. Then the dialogue looks at the future and helps them, sorry, I just had to admit someone then, helps them make informed decisions about it. And we can also assist them to make their plans and think about their actions, and we'll support them then as they take action. Sorry, got a pussycat come to visit, trying to get to my keyboard. So the main thing I want you to know, though, is although I've suggested a clockwise cycle through this process, and I'll continue that as I explain each of the 4 elements, I do keep in mind that in a real mentoring conversation, you're likely to skip back and forth many times. And although I talk about the mentoring conversation, it's more likely to be a series of conversations you have over time. In fact, I urge you not to rush it and to remain very flexible, because mentoring is about enabling people to decide for themselves and set goals that are right for them. The framework simply provides a supporting structure for you and for them. So your first step is really to, as I said, get them to reflect on what's going on, their current reality. You want to explore their thoughts and feelings. This is a conversation that really is all about them. After that, you're going to, and as I said, don't rush that part. That's really important, because this is where you're going to find out about their values and their priorities, so that when it comes to decision making, remember, we want them to make informed decisions about their goals and about the actions they're going to take. Well, their values and their priorities have to inform those decisions as much as any facts or any input or research or information that comes into the mix. So second step is really about generating options and possibilities, and you empower people when they have options to choose from. You empower them to make good decisions that are right for them, and informed decisions based on information and on their priorities, their needs, their wants, their values. Then we move towards action. They decide goals. They think about how to achieve those goals with your help. You are a sounding board. You question them, you can guide them and help them come up with actions and plans to get their goals. And then at a later time, it's really about, after they've taken some action, it's all about the follow through and adjustment to a new reality that they've created. They've changed the situation in some way. So there's going to be some adjustment perhaps to that. So what makes this approach fail-safe is the 4 questions that provide a framework for your mentoring conversation. These are not the questions you actually ask the mentee, but these are the questions you hold in your mind as you frame questions that are appropriate, comfortable for you, and appropriate to the situation of the person that you're dealing with. And I'll speak more about each of them in a moment, but for the short term, here they are. Question number 1, as we explore their thoughts and feelings, is, where are you now? And you're not necessarily going to say those words to a mentee, but this is what you are trying to help them figure out and to understand. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? So where are you going? How might you get there? And then later on, it's some variation of, how are you doing now? What's changed? Okay, so love to hear your input. If you'd like to share your experiences, those of you who've been with me for a while, have you used this? How's it worked for you? And also your thoughts about why this works for you. I'm going to share some of my thoughts on why it works, but I'd love to have your input as well. So the reason I found it works is because the model itself is based on adult learning. Now, I've always worked with adults, or at least if it was younger people, they were young adults, and adult learning is conducive to people taking experiential learning to making their own decisions. And so that's one reason. The other reason is, as a mentor, and we're all busy people, your mentoring should not involve a lot of extra work for you beyond perhaps some initial training and preparation, but not too much beyond the actual conversations themselves. You send them away to do the work. They go away with an action plan of research they're going to do before the next conversation. They go away with some ideas of where to look to find out the information they need. They go away and do activities that perhaps you've assigned for them to do and come back and discuss. You are actually a sounding board. You are not telling them what to do. You're helping them figure out what to do. They think it through. You are the guide. They decide. You're not telling or selling. And this process means that they take responsibility for their actions. So we have more responsible people going out there in the world. Just having a look for Any questions? Okay, Simone is saying, yeah, it definitely works in my experience, and it's a simple process, makes sense to the mentees. I think it's quite motivating. Ron's saying, okay, Ron, your messages are coming directly to me. I'm not sure if you want them shared or not. Just have a look. A little blue bar down the bottom says everyone can see them or just me. Okay, cool. I'm going to continue because I am running a little bit behind time here. I want to get all the content and have time for questions at the end. So let's talk about the questions. Those 4 questions are the framework for your mentoring conversation. They are your fail-safe method. That's all you need to remember. 3 or 4 questions. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? How might you get there? And then something for the follow-up. How's it going now? So basically those 3 questions. As I said earlier, you're not slavishly necessarily going around clockwise fashion one after the other. In a real conversation, you will go back and forth. So you might be into your action planning phase and find you need to flip back into the where are you now stuff to check their values, to check their priorities, to have a reality check of where they are now in the context of where they want to be and how might they get there. So you need that flexibility. But they're the questions to hold in your mind. I actually call them umbrella questions because under that umbrella of where are you now, there's a whole bunch of variations that will actually be the questions that you ask. Dirk saying it's a lot like a business plan. It is exactly like a business plan. One of the other sources when I put this model together, apart from adult learning, was strategic planning and business planning. These are the same questions you ask at an organizational level, at a business level, at a project team level when you're making a plan, and it works. And my background was also career development, so it was that context of, okay, where are you now, where do you want to be, and then how might you get there, with some follow-up after that. So I call those the umbrella questions. So you remember those and then you develop your own repertoire. So in terms of where are you now, and do type some of the things that you might use to open up a new mentoring conversation with a new mentee. Let's get some groupthink happening, or not groupthink, but some brainstorming happening here to share with our group. Where are you now? It might be what's on your mind today, what you like to talk about, what's on your agenda. Now, that last question, in a series of mentoring conversations, I would encourage you to train your mentees to come with an agenda, and preferably send you an agenda prior to the meeting. This focuses them and you on getting the conversation going. It gives you a place. So you might start with a bit of small talk on a follow-up meeting, and then you've got their agenda, and you can, you can revise. And I don't mean get really formal with this. It can be a simple number of dot points. 1, 2, 3, just to get the conversation started. Okay, so there are some alternatives. And just a reminder, we don't want to rush this because, as Freud said, the mind is like an iceberg. It floats with 1/7 of its bulk above the water. So what you're seeing with this person, what they're speaking is the top of mind stuff, the conscious stuff. If you have a good mentoring conversation, they will actually be aware. Their subconscious ideas, their thoughts and their feelings that they're not even perhaps aware of will raise into their awareness. And that can give a lot of insight and a lot of value to those conversations. Of course, reminder, we are not psychoanalyzing them. We are simply learning from the realm of coaching and counseling and those sorts of areas, the skills that will help us be great mentors. So to facilitate, we want to get them talking and keep them talking. So we'll use something like minimal response, the sort of small sounds, aha, go on. Of course, your non-verbal body language is also showing your interest in them, encouraging them. You might do a little bit of gentle probing. Can you say a little bit more about that? Would you like to expand me? Perhaps you'd like to tell me. So little phrases, encouraging them to expand. And then reflective listening. So when there's a pause, you might reflect back. This checks your understanding. It also checks them, because sometimes we don't say exactly what we mean. So it's a chance for them to clarify and go, you know what, no, that's not quite what I meant. So these phrases, so what you're saying is what I'm hearing from your point of view. You'll have your own phrases that you want to use, okay? So Simone's saying, perhaps ask what are the pain points. Yeah, organizations have their own jargon, words and phrases that are trendy. Someone asked me a little bit about mentoring Gen Z came up, and it's a big subject in itself, but without being over the top and being fake, it is useful to understand some of the terminology that that younger people are using so that you can communicate with them. So moving on now to the stage of the conversation where we're generating options and possibilities. Our umbrella question is, where do you want to be? And so maybe you'd like to type in some of your favorite questions under this umbrella of where do you want to be. You can, here are just a few of mine. What would you like to be different in the future? So they've been painting a picture of the past or the present, and now you want to move the conversation on. You want them to have a vision of where they want to be. So what would you like to be different in the future? What are you aiming for? Where do you see yourself? What's the ideal scenario? What does it look like? Ask them to describe that. And you empower them with alternatives to weigh up and choose from. If you do something like a brainstorm, so let's have a brainstorm of the possibilities. And then as they firm up their goals and plans, you'll help them get more specific about the actions they need to take and the milestones along the way. So it is, again, it is like that business plan, action plans and milestones is what you'll generate here. Moving on to the next step then is how might you get there? So essentially what you're trying to do is get a little bit more specific about what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, so time frame, and how they'll do it. You might probably talk about, what resources they need. Do they need to go and do another course? Do they need a learning network? Do they need a certain amount of time? Do they need to really go and think things through? Is there a discussion they need to have with other people? So what are they going to do? When are they going to do it? And how are they going to do it? And I know many of you know the terminology of the SMART goals. So you could progress using that. Some of you might be using the GROW model, and that's a useful model as well. I'm just going to keep it real simple for the time being and say, how might you get there? All right. And so you can see that the next phase actually does take place after some time has passed. You and your mentee, you've helped your mentee to come up with a plan of action. It's up to them to go away and implement some of that. Break it down into short-term goals, small steps along the way, and then come back and talk about how that's working out. So essentially, it is a review and adjustment process. So what you want to know is, have they progressed? What went well? What didn't go so well? Do they need a different approach. So they tried one thing and that, mightn't have worked so well. So we need to adjust that approach a little bit. Or is it simply a matter of time and persistence? So if that's the case, how's their motivation? Because people are very enthusiastic. The research tells us we are most enthusiastic right after we've set that goal. However, as time goes on and the hard work needs to kick in, we can lose motivation. So a big part of the mentor's role is not to rev them up necessarily, but to make sure they're maintaining their interest levels, maybe remind them of the values and the reasons why they decided to pursue this goal. So let's have a look and see. So there's the model for you. As I said, simple 4 steps. All you need to remember is those questions. And if you can hold those in your mind, you will be able to frame up questions suitable for your situation and the person you're working with. Let's just have a look if there's any questions. If not, I'm going to go back to questions that came up before. I'm just scrolling back now through questions that we might have. Okay. Just looking at the questions. Okay, so Simone was after thoughts on mentoring Gen Z. Okay, so I've got that. And also there was someone else who wanted to talk about mastermind groups. Okay, so if anyone out there has some experience with Gen Z that you would like to share, that would be really great. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the first question, which was about the mastermind group. Let me see who that was from. Okay, and that was Simone as well. All right. So the mastermind group, I'm just trying to think of the reference to this. It may be, no, it escapes me. It's quite a classic concept going back to maybe 1920s or 30s, the days of sort of Henry Ford, and when people were really starting to look at how to get the most out of our minds for business and that sort of thing. And so the concept came about where you would meet with a group of your peers, your colleagues. Typically, this is used in business. So for me, my experience was with other businessmen and businesswomen, a small group. You don't want to have too large a group because then it takes too long and it's difficult for everyone to, get their chance to have the floor. Frequently, the idea is it's like connecting a bunch of batteries. I'm not a scientist, so I can't recall how that actually works, but the power of 10 batteries apparently is greater than the sum of the individuals. It's kind of synergy. So by connecting with a group of experienced business people, you can bring a business problem to the table and get their input. It's a confidential situation. Obviously, there needs to be a lot of trust between the group. So I see this as being really good for professionals as well, and a way of, sometimes when you're in business or when you're a manager, senior manager, it can be a lonely place, and you've got to have a forum where you can talk about your issues in confidence. So a mastermind group is a way of coming together. No one particular person is the mentor. Some mastermind groups have a facilitator. There isn't organisation, again, his name escapes me. I had COVID, I'm sorry, and my mind's a bit foggy since then, but there is an organisation here in Australia specifically for CEOs of organisations, and they meet once a month for a mastermind group. And there is a facilitator of that group, and each person will have a chance to list the issues that they want to talk about on the agenda. They meet for an entire day. They often have a guest speaker in the morning for ongoing CEO education, and then in the afternoon, they work their way through the agenda items with input from each person. So that is a mastermind group. Okay, so we've got someone who's saying how you might get there is the most difficult thing to process. Yeah, that is an action plan. Can be quite difficult moving from A to B. And it really may need some research and application. And remember, in this style of mentoring, we are not putting the work on the mentor, we are putting the work on the mentee. So if you are having difficulty in working out, okay, how might you get there, then you must set them some research tasks. So it might be, and you might need some resources, things like, if it's in a career context, books like What Colour is Your Parachute? Books like Up is Not the Only Way, or if it is a career context, the book that I wrote, was it last year or the year before, which is the Mentors Toolkit. So I hope you can see that. The Mentors Toolkit talks about mentoring in the specific context of career, and it has heaps of activities for mentees to do. So you could, and within your organisation, you might have career resources. You might say, okay, if you want to be in a particular position, how about you go and contact someone who is already working in that position and ask if you can have a conversation with them about how they got to where they are and how they would suggest someone who wanted to get to where they are would go about that. Okay, Maribel is saying, yes, what colour is your parachute? Nelson Bowles wrote that. In fact, that book is such a Bible for career development that he issues a new edition practically every year, updated, lots of activities, a wealth of information in this area. If you're in a university, as I know many of you are, it'll be in your university library, or in your, if you've got a resource section in your faculty or for staff, it's going to be there. It is a classic, but also, as I said, updated practically every year. So I'd certainly recommend that. And if you go online, you'll probably find some additional research. The other book that I mentioned was Up is Not the Only Way. And again, you don't have to necessarily go and buy a huge library. I did. But you can find a lot of their information online. So you can get a feel for it through webinars, through blog posts, what have you. Up is Not the Only Way. I'm sorry, I can't recall the authors off the top of my head. And have a look. I know I've seen a lot of their stuff online. Get a feel for it. And then if you feel it's appropriate, then you can buy the book. And my book is called The Mentors Toolkit for Career Conversations. All my webinars last year were based on that book. So we were looking at this model and these questions with many more specific questions in the context of assisting someone to talk about their career, make plans for their career. So you might want to have a look. Oh, thank you, Maribel. You're a lifesaver. Maribel's got the reference there for you. Beverly Kay and Lindy Williams, and Lynn Cowan. Up is not the only way. Thanks for that. Okay, I'm just going to scroll back now because we are getting to the end. In fact, I've got through the content. What we talked about, what I first talked about was the 10 ways to use mentoring. So I have a free ebook on the website if you'd like to know more about it's called Many Ways to Mentor, completely free. It's very brief, but it's very brief, but it makes the point of there are these different ways to use mentoring. There isn't just one way to mentor. There's not just one definition of mentoring. And one of the things you need to get clear right from the get-go with a mentee is what you're talking about when you talk about mentoring. You need to give them some expectations. This expectation that you are not going to do all the work for them, that you want them to speak up, that you're going to be asking them questions and giving them the space to think out loud in a safe place. And I know in a lot of cultures where you might be mentoring someone younger or more junior, that takes a lot of work to have them open up and to feel comfortable, or even to sit with their discomfort and be really open with you. They might have a different expectation. They might expect to be asking you questions and for you to be telling them. And that's your choice, but everything you'll read from me will encourage you. I'm not saying never answer a question. I'm not saying never give advice. I'm not saying never tell people what you think, but I am saying put the brakes on that. Be slow to do that. In fact, I think the next webinar might even be slow to give advice. So I've talked about the 10 ways. I gave you that 4-step formula. Isn't it easy just to keep in mind 3 or 4 steps? You never have to worry about what to say or do again, because you know it's going to be your own variation on one of those questions. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? How might you get there? And then the follow-up question after they've done something is really, well, how's it going now? What happened since we met last? Okay. Maribel's saying something really wise here. I find that conducting a mentee training helps mentees open up and know what to expect from a mentoring conversation. They normally think it is a one-way learning conversation, which is, part of many students' experience. But what we're trying to do is have a relationship with someone that is an adult learning experience. And I've given you some sample questions. Come back, we will go into more depth in subsequent webinars. This is the foundation today, getting the model out there for you. And as I said, if it's a career context that you're interested in, be sure to go back and look at the recordings on the Mentoring Works YouTube channel. So I'm keen to know what your key takeaways are from today, and any actions that you are going to implement. And if you want to share those, I'd love to see your key takeaways and your actions. Just type them in. Just a reminder, yes, so our next webinar is Be Slow to Give Advice. So come along to that one. I'll be talking about why you should be slow, although many of you will have a good idea about that now. Why you should be slow, what to do instead of jumping in to give advice. But I will also talk about, because as I said, I don't say never give advice. I will also talk about when you do need to give advice, how to do it in such a way that we are sticking to kind of our philosophy of not telling people what to do. Yes, Ron, the recording will be available to you on YouTube. I'll put that up pretty soon today. This year's workshops are all based on advanced mentoring skills, taking your conversations to the next level. When you buy the book, you don't only get the book, whether you want a paperback or an ebook. It comes with access to 12 video masterclasses so that you can go through those. It's more or less like a self-paced learning program, if you like. It's available through Amazon mainly, but also if you've got a good bookstore, ask them and they'll probably get it in for you as well. Okay, just looking. Okay, Maribel's takeaway is the umbrella questions. Yeah, it helps you organize the type of questions that you're going to ask and build a repertoire of questions. Oh, Maria, you got your copy yesterday. Fantastic. I'm so pleased. Thank you. Thank you very much. And Evie's saying a deeper appreciation of the forms or ways to mentor, especially the recent ones. Now, I'm conscious I didn't answer the question. Okay, and Simone's saying, understand more about the different ways of mentoring. Okay, so go to the website, download that ebook. It's free. If you have a problem, just email me and I'll make sure you can get that. Megan is saying, remind my mentors to follow up soon and often after the mentee has set goals. Post the 4 questions as a reminder on how to start discussions. Yeah, and if you are a facilitator, a program facilitator, Megan, that's a really great idea. In fact, one of the things you could do is have a brainstorming session on, okay, if this is the umbrella question, how would we phrase that question? What would be our way of putting that? Okay. Simone's thinking about who she could ask to be in a mastermind group. And again, Simone, go online, look up mastermind group, find some, and I'm just trying to think, have I got an ebook? I may have done a webinar once. Simone, if you drop me an email, I may have something for you on mastermind groups in terms of how to get the best out of it. I'm pretty sure I did an ebook on that once upon a time. Okay, looking at what's coming in. Okay, looking at reevaluating the mentoring relationship with a team. Okay, thank you, Josephine. Okay. All right. I'm conscious, Simone, that I didn't answer your question about Gen Z, and I'll be honest, it's not a thing I've turned my mind to a great deal. I have retired, and so I'm not working in the corporate world anymore. So my contact in a professional way is quite limited. My experience does go through, sort of thoughts and experiences with the previous generations. And I will confess, I'm a little, I understand there are differences, but I worry about it becoming another ism like sexism and racism, and it's kind of ageism, whether it's older people looking down on younger people, which I've seen happen, or indeed younger people looking down on older people, the whole hey boomer kind of thing, and the boomers kind of shaking heads about, oh, the youth of today. But what I would say is people are people, and people, when you listen to them, when you show a polite curiosity, a respectful curiosity, when you ask questions respectfully and really listen to those answers, they respond to that, regardless of their age, regardless of their position in an organization. We are humans and we respond to the level of communication that is your opportunity to experience and offer through your mentoring. And I think that's a good note to kind of wind it up. We are 1 minute away, so I will stick around if you have got more questions. I'm going to stick around. I'm going to stop the recording now. If you are watching the recording, thank you, and do subscribe, because you'll get invitations to the live webinars, which are far more exciting than watching a recording, in my opinion, and free ebooks and all sorts of things as well. So thank you.